Welcome to Team Futurism. Today I'm interviewing Zoltan Istvan, who is a prominent futurist and an Oxford scholar, and he is currently running for governor of California. Zoltan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, I had you on the show today to talk specifically about a central concept to your campaign. And I really want to drill into this because it's a new concept that you're currently just exploring and writing about. It is called automated abundance economy. Let's just start with a simple definition. How would you define kind of broadly what the automated abundance economy is?
Well, we're entering this crazy age where AI is, dominant in our lives. Robots are on the horizon within a 1 to 2 year time frame. There's going to be millions of them, not only driving cars, but cleaning and cooking and doing things like this. So we're entering an age where automation is really ubiquitous. And, the automated abundance economy is really how can the human race benefit from that? How can we make it so our lives are more leisurely, easier, better, more productive? And it's really just a matter of utilizing that automation, but doing it in a way that's fair to the populace, and that's also fair to the people that are creating the technology. So there's a really interesting balance to be had there, but I think it's going to benefit everyone.
Do you see this as something that is going to arrive organically, or do you think that we need to right now really kind of push for this to happen? Is this something that you're just describing that's already happening, or is this something that you personally are pushing to happen?
I am absolutely pushing for it to happen as hard as possible. It will not happen if we don't force it. The billionaires will take the automation, take the technology, and try to keep the people in place, poor and suffering. And that's just the way capitalism goes. Whereas automated abundance economy tries to transition not necessarily out of capitalism, but into kind of a more sophisticated form of capitalism where the profits can be spread across the entire playing field without necessarily compromising much for the people that created the technology in the first place, but giving a giant benefit to the people that are beneficiaries of that technology, the working class people, everyone else just across the board, especially those who are going to be losing their job to automation.
So automation is the inevitable point here. We're definitely going to, this is everyone basically seems to agree with this. And it seems like you're very much on board with this, that automation is happening sooner rather than later. And so we need to prepare for it right now. Do you have any misgivings about that, or how confident do you feel about the impending automation of, 80, 90% of the economy? Or how do you kind of look at that?
Well, no misgivings. I think it's coming. There's no question. So if you actually look at the footprint of the buildings going up around the world to build these humanoid robots, the ones that will be cooking for us and cleaning for us, they're in place right now. China and the United States are just building these things out rapidly. And there are orders, for example, South Korea put in an order for 1,000 robots to do welding on big ships and things like that. And these orders are in. So that means these robots are already going to be commissioned and put out by next year. So, the entire world is about to change. And so it's not in any way a dreamland, or we're not talking about something science fiction. This is like a 12 to 18 month window where you're going to be walking out your front door and seeing a humanoid robot walking someone else's dog and picking up the poop after it. That is going to be happening in the next 1 to 2 years, literally guaranteed. And so the bigger question then is, how do we deal with that? And, this is where we came up with the automated abundance economy. Let me just say, for your listeners to know, you and Arun Kumar have had a huge influence on this idea. We were looking for a name when I've been telling you guys about it in my campaign. You guys are helping. And so we're all three sort of co-founders in this idea, trying to move it forward and try to develop. But of course, we are welcoming it to everyone out there because, this is like kind of modern monetary theory in comparison. It's an economic system, and it requires many, many millions of people to put their ideas into it and to try to evolve it into something that's workable for society. So it's not just my campaign that's trying to use it. It's, I think, a lot of people all around the world that are going to say, well, how can we use automation successfully in our lives even if we lose our jobs, and even if there are robots all over the place, which of course is a scary thing.
I love this point, and it actually is maybe worth lingering for a minute on the origin story of this. So, for the last maybe, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 years, I have heard a lot of kind of like talking heads on YouTube, specifically like Eric Weinstein and some people like this, talking about how the economy as we currently know it cannot continue for much longer. It's kind of predicated on the ever expanding human population. And as soon as the human population starts to shrink, all of a sudden nothing makes sense anymore. And we're starting to see this in a lot of like countries where all of a sudden, if their population, the average age is like 65, and you have a small, younger workforce, no one can sustain that. All of a sudden, we have this almost like magically timed phenomenon of automation. And automation might be the thing that unlocks a new economy that economists didn't even know was imaginable. And so, yeah, in terms of like this term and this concept, you mentioned this to me and Arun, a mutual friend of ours, not too long ago, and you said that you're brainstorming, workshopping this, and I had actually just recently finished everybody's new favorite book, Abundance, by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson. Great book, by the way. Like I genuinely read this with a lot of excitement. I know that some people on the far left of the Democratic Party are finding ways to be unhappy with it, but it made me just genuinely excited. It seems to me that the things that make life hard for the average person in America today is unaffordable housing and education costs and healthcare costs, the normal boring stuff, right? And if we start to just right now with the right vision for regulations, and also they very much factor technology into their book. It's a big factor in this book. If we lean into technology rather than be just like scared of it and push it away, we could potentially right now be looking towards a very bright future. And so I do think that you are coming along with this concept at exactly the right moment, not only for like America, but I mean, like, yeah, kind of like you were saying, like the world, like this is a pivotal moment, and we need to thread this needle correctly so that we don't end up in a dystopia.
Yeah, no, and let's thank Erza Klein for sure, who essentially I think gave us all the concept of abundance, but also Peter Diamandis, who had a book about abundance actually 10 years before Erza Klein. So it's the idea of futurist and technology-driven people thinking about these things is like, this is what automation can bring. This is what AI can bring to the world. Is if you think the economy's kind of going up 2% a year, and that's great. Well, just wait till we have AI, robots, automation, and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. I mean, we could go through an enormous renaissance of economic output, productivity, and we won't even have to be laboring. That's the greatest part about it. We could just have this huge uptick towards kind of the Star Trek era without actually having to even get our hands dirty.
I was fed today by the algorithm on YouTube a video by Morgan Stanley, which I didn't even know they had a YouTube channel. Apparently they do. And it was this video called AI is about to get physical. And here's a quote and the video was all about, cars are coming and like robots, humanoid robots are coming. All these different things are coming that are just like, we're used to just AI being on a phone or in glasses or something like this, but it's becoming a physical thing that will dominate every aspect of our lives, just like we're talking about here. There's this quote that I thought was fascinating, and it kind of brings home the magnitude of this a little bit. The quote is, "The US labor market has 160 million people. Every 1% substitution by a humanoid robot is worth $300 billion. So we are talking about a ton of money, right? And this money will be funneled to the corporations that own the robots. So kind of explain to me in practical terms how we, the government, the people, encourage those corporations to distribute the wealth so that we don't end up in that dystopia where there is no abundance for the masses. There is just ultra wealth in the pockets of a couple hundred people, and we're in a world that looks like, sci-fi dystopia. How do we get that money from the robots to the people?
Listen, I mean, the great thing about the automated abundance economy really has to do with this works both ways. It works in favor of the government, getting money, giving productivity, having kind of a renaissance of the economy, as well as capitalists, being able to produce things, robots, AI, automation. There's just going to be GDP is going to go through the roof. So kind of it's a winner takes all. Furthermore, there's a third component there, which is the people. I think we're going to, generally benefit. People are worried they're going to lose their jobs. Yes, they're probably going to lose their jobs. But if we do this right, we can structure potentially a universal basic income, something that'll be helped out by the government. We could maybe have stock incentives to the companies that are making the technology. I mean, there's a million different ways. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But the point is that we're talking about an economic system that really can benefit everyone, all the parties involved. And I think, when you talk about what the government can do with this, well, finally, the government might be able to have enough money without having to kind of, distribute it in the some places that make sense and some places that don't make sense. Finally, they're going to have, enough machinery, enough automation to actually restructure themselves. So the government might actually become efficient. I mean, can you imagine an efficient government? And that's really the promise of AI and automation. In fact, the government will probably shrink in the long run. Not that, some Democrats don't want that at all, but that's the truth. Because if you have enough automation, you have enough algorithms, you have enough AI, a lot of people won't be necessary just to streamline the efficiency for the benefit of society. In the end of the day, that's really what the government is about. So I think there's huge beneficiaries to basically the entire idea of the automated abundance economy.
Okay, so maybe I'm thinking about this if I were maybe a high school student and have a very unsophisticated view of this. Is it at least somewhat fair to say, okay, robots take all the jobs, we tax the robots, and then through tax money, people get a universal basic income. So we tax the robots and people get a universal basic income. Is that a very basic, uncomplicated perspective?
Yes, it is. It is. But just so people know, there's a lot of different ways to provide a universal basic income. Andrew Yang, for example, wanted to create a VAT. I want to create something called a federal land dividend, where we utilize about these trillions of dollars, $150 trillion worth of federal land that's largely empty in the United States. We can lease them out to companies. Other people want to tax crypto or tax the robots. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's a multitude of factors and ways to do this to get enough money so that we can pay everyone enough money to have food, shelter, clothing, and enjoy their lives. Again, if you're not working, you have a lot more free time to do what you want. So there's a lot of different methods. But let me just say, I would say the biggest promise, not only of my campaign, but also of this economic system, is really the idea that it's not just robots for businesses or the government. It's robots for you. My campaign is promising a humanoid robot for every California household over the next 4 years. We're either going to give it to people or we're going to lease it. And if robots come out at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, they're probably going to by next year, and by later this year, there'll be 80,000 when Tesla gets its bots out. We'll be able to afford that, and that's going to save you time. I don't know what you're doing for dinner this evening, but I got to cook it. And so if we come to a point when all these different chores we have to do, this is going to save an enormous amount of time for us. So I feel like there's a lot of amazing things that we can do with these robots that also kind of add to the basic income. I guess the automated abundance economy is not only about a basic income. It's really about a new type of lifestyle, a lifestyle that relies on automation, robots in your households that cater to every need. Nobody wants to do laundry. I don't want to do laundry. A lot of times you don't want to walk the dog. You're just tired. You want it to pick up the poop. You don't want to mow the lawn. I mean, this is the thing in the next 24 to 36 months that's going to be crazy in terms of how much time it saves us. don't see it as only a basic income. It's really an entire system of utilizing automation. Even when you drive, let's say LA to San Francisco, they have this great train project. It's total ridiculous. It's spending billions of dollars. Just spend the money on the automated cars, get in the car and be there in 5 hours, and sit in the back seat with the AI driving and just read your newspaper or play the internet or do whatever you want to do, sleep. But the point of the story is like automation is going to really change things. It changed the economy and changed the world we live in.
Right now, the protests are happening in LA and it's starting to spread across the nation. The images of this are reminiscent of a dystopian future. They always are. This is nothing unique. I mean, protests, mass protests, they're so great fodder for like journalists to get like great shots. And the memes spread and it always looks dystopian. So, but that said, it's just on my mind as I talk to you about this. Do you think that as people lose their jobs, I can't imagine it's going to be a simple transition. Do you think that we're going to go, even best case scenario, we're going to go through a time when people are doing mass protests on the streets if we lose 20-30% of the jobs to robots in the somewhat near future? I mean, I just, even in my best case scenarios, I just can't picture being that smooth of a transition. Are you worried about that at all?
Well, I'm definitely worried about it. In fact, it's the primary reason I'm running for governor in California right now is because I feel like nobody's talking about this incident, this issue that's going to literally happen in 12, 18, 24 months, maybe 36. It doesn't matter when it happens, and that definitely in the next few years. And it's going to transform the job market. I mean, people are just simply going to become unemployed. And they're never going to find another job again unless that job is like tending your neighbor's yard or something, just a personal one-on-one thing. But if you're like a coder, it's over. If you're a journalist, it's pretty much over. If you're, an engineer, sayonara. I'm sorry, these are bad things. There's just no way around it. The machine will do a better job than all of us at everything. So if we're kept, it'll be because maybe government makes laws and you can't fire people, very communistic types of ideas. But, the point of the story is no one is going to be able to survive. I think very few people, maybe 1, 2, 3% of the population. The job apocalypse, AI will just do better at everything. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. The American dream doesn't have to be that you work your butt off to make $1 million and then you die. The American dream can be renewed, and it can be something where you let automation do all the work and you have a great time learning to play the guitar or doing your third PhD or just reading books all day. I mean, I don't know what people are going to want to do. The automated abundance economy isn't trying to force people on what kind of mission they should have in life. Certainly I think there'll be a huge creativity of art because people have more time to join bands and things like that and write novels. But what's important to me is that people don't have to labor 9 to 5 under the man all their lives. And that's what a lot of us are doing, suffering, 9 to 5, 6 days a week. We get our 1 week of vacation a year, and then you're right back to it. And you get one single medical problem, and then all of a sudden you go bankrupt after 30 years of work. It's a terrible, terrible system. Whereas the automated abundance economy is something that can completely change that. You don't need to worry about losing your job because you have a basic income, robots that take care of you, including medically. The whole structure of society can become so much better for the average person than it is right now. And so that's really what, I'm trying to promote on my campaign. And so when you see these riots and you see these demonstrations, like there's a better world coming. I promise you that.
Yeah, a big hobby horse of mine is being scared about population decline, and I could see actually this being an unlock for humans actually starting to make babies again. Because this is the thing: I have a 3-year-old daughter, and my wife and I both work. Daycare is extraordinarily expensive. Taking time off for a sick kid is extraordinarily inconvenient. When you're working all day long, it's I would like to have a second kid. I have no idea how anyone has a second kid, right? It is so time consuming. If I could, like you're saying, just in this almost like it sounds like a utopian dream, maybe work 1 or 2 days a week. Maybe each shift is like 4 hours, not 8. And then your chores are just kind of done for you. I don't know. That takes away all the reasons why I'm right now not able to have another baby, and maybe that would just all of a sudden sound like a great idea. So I mean, I think that this could actually transform society in really radical ways, because if we do just have even 20% more time, your average working American, that's a lot of time. You can do a lot of things with that time, and that's just very exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think people underestimate what it means to have a robot do 10 hours of chores a week. If we all had 10 hours, especially like an extra hour in the evenings or the afternoons or the mornings, let's say, it really would transform your life. Like you said, you would have more time for babies. You'd have more time for, sex things. I mean, just the whole thing was going to become a better world for all of us when we have something like a live-in maid or a live-in chauffeur, and that's essentially what the robots is. So it's going to kind of enter us into the Jetsons age, and it's just going to be more leisurely. And I think that's really a big push of what I'm trying to tell people in my campaign is that, hey, this is a better world. It's not always going to be a struggle 9 to 5 or maybe more than that if you're working. And the challenge, though, I think really with this, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, is that maybe not everyone's going to be able to make as much money anymore. Maybe we're going to be sort of stuck in a system where your basic income is what you get. Maybe there's a little extra you make or whatever. But that's a big challenge, and that's where I think people have to kind of start shifting their sense of what the American dream is. Is that the American dream is not necessarily you are defined by your productivity. You are defined by your net worth. Actually, you can be defined by the amount of children you have. You can be defined by the amount of free time you have. You can be defined by the fact that you're an expert in the piano and the guitar and the cello, something you couldn't have dreamed before, but now you have a lot more leisure time and you become an expert on that. So I think we're going to transform how we imagine each other, perceive each other, judge each other. It's not going to be based so much on monetary success or your productivity. It's going to be based on what cool things you're doing, what interesting things you're doing.
That to me is really exciting as someone who doesn't resonate with, I don't find much like human fulfillment out of a job. I just never have. It's just not my thing. But yeah, I am really curious about this sense of we're going through, people talk about this all the time, a quote unquote like crisis in meaning thing, right? I mean, I don't resonate with this. I also am not a Zoomer. I mean, I think I've gone through, all those really challenging times of life. But how is this going to be for young people, do you think? People who right now, they don't have a lot of friends. They are tied to online communities where they're kind of like simulated friends. And we just hear about, I don't know, I just read articles all the time about depression and the suicide rates and just things that are like really bring me down about modern society. And I don't know if I see in this brave new world that's fully automated, I don't know if I see those problems naturally getting better. I mean, I worry about the youth in this new world that we're entering. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that? About like the quote, meaning crisis that particularly for young people, I don't know, with communities not being as robust as they were, et cetera. I'm curious about your thoughts about this.
Well, we might find that communities make a rebound. And that's because all of a sudden you have a lot more time to dedicate to your community. I mean, imagine again, if it's like, let's just say I'm not a religious person, but if you want to go to church, but you can't figure it out because your schedule's too busy. Well, now all of a sudden all your chores are done and you're not working. Guess you have plenty of time for church. I mean, let's just say that as a community. But of course, it's so much different in terms of soccer, football. I mean, if you wanted to be the best soccer player in the world, you can now dedicate 8 hours. Maybe you play in a team all day long. I mean, right now it seems like I can't see any disadvantages from having automation allow people to have maximum freedom. It's possible. What I worry about, and some people worry about, is that maybe we become like that world Wall-E, where everyone just eats all day and watches sitcoms. But I actually believe more in people than that.
I do too,
That's
yeah.
a good satire. But I think most people, and even studies have shown this with basic income. You give people extra money, what happens to them? They want more money. They start learning ways to make more money with money. And that's exactly what happens, because I think we're built with this kind of competitive, capitalistic kind of mindset. So if people are just left on their own, I think very few are just going to say, oh, I'm going to be a lazy person and do nothing all day. I think most people are going to say, okay, this is the day I'm going to learn to play tennis and become an expert at it, or I'm going to learn to play chess or whatever. People are going to find things that they're passionate about, and the world's going to improve. And I think that's going to lead to more community, because there'll be more time to build these communities in the first place. Young people, it is a little bit challenging because they're finding meaning, and meaning is going to be different. A lot of times in history, our meaning has been tied to what we did or who we were, what our profession was. But I think now, if it's not a profession, it'll be a sport or a passion or an educational something. I mean, people are still going to find things to do. And I think they're going to put their sense of self-worth in that. And hopefully, I honestly believe that a lot of the problem with youth has to do more with social media. I think once you actually have a robot or automation all around you that you can interact with, and maybe one that's more truthful than your human counterparts on Twitter or whatever, the world will probably become better, and you'll see less depression, less suicides, and things like that.
I really hope so. And actually, what gives me hope about that is actually, again, going back to my daughter, she hasn't entered that period of life where you even start thinking about grades or what's your profession. That those concepts have not even entered her brain at all. And this is a beautiful moment in life where everything does just revolve around literally having fun. Like the concept, how can I have fun right now or today? And this is a beautiful thing because she has fun by like playing with her friends or doing ballet, or there's like infinite ways to have fun. And if you grow up, which, presumably some people will grow up never having the idea, even never being introduced to the idea in an organic way of like, oh, you need to find a job. What's your job going to be when you grow up? How are you going to feed yourself? How's your self-worth going to be tied to this thing that you do called the 9 to 5 job? If you don't get exposed to that at a young age, it may just be a foreign concept. I mean, like, it's possible that 50 years from now, all the young people alive don't even have that as an idea in their brains, right? I mean, if you play this out long enough and it all goes right, that could totally be possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really don't see the downsides. I think the downsides right now is that, we are fighting for survival. That's really the basis of what humans do. You're born at this world, and you got to kind of make your money to eat and have a family. And if you want to feed that family, you got to make enough money. And so life's been somewhat brutal, but all of a sudden we're coming to a point when if we can control AI, control robots, and they listen to us, then all of a sudden, we enter this brand new age where productivity goes through the roof. It's outstanding. And they benefit us. They do things for us that allow us to do the things we've always wanted to do. And believe me, there are a lot of things I've always wanted to do too. And I haven't been able to for financial reasons or time reasons or this or that. And, if I have those extra hours, I promise you I'm going to use them wisely. And I think the majority of people will do that, because the majority of people have the same sort of mindset, which is, wow, life is precious. Life is cool. Let's do cool things, whatever your cool thing is. And but the problem has always been money and time. Now, If all of a sudden you have that, you're just going to end up doing cool things all day long, and that in itself is going to create a kind of a social renaissance of the likes we haven't seen.
That actually leads into a concept that I've been playing with recently. I wrote this article called What Comes After Dopamine Culture. And, right now we're in this world where you don't play sports, you gamble on sports, or you don't have friends, you have social media friends, and you just want that instant gratification of like the dopamine hit when you get a like on your Facebook post or whatever silly things happen in the world today. But there is a possibility that we could transition out of that into something that is maybe what we should be shooting for all along. If you think back to like Maslow's hierarchy thing, at the very peak of that is actualization. And he developed this concept of the peak experience. And we get these on rare occasions where maybe you're on drugs at a rock concert, or you're skydiving, or you have been an adventurer throughout your life. You invented the sport of volcano surfing. Which I'm sure was a peak experience, right? I'm sure that like stuck with you. if we live in a world where we have more free time, medicine is advanced, so we don't have to be worried about like dying doing, crazy adventurous things. I could see this is my utopia vision that, I'm just basing it off, fun thought experiment, but we could maybe transition into a peak experience culture. And all of a sudden we don't wake up just to have fun, but to have peak experiences. That's kind of my like ultra optimistic vision of the future, because that sounds kind of glorious to me.
Well, yeah, I've always been a big fan of peak experiences just because I kind of I believe that they're transformative. A big influence early in my life was Jim Morrison. In terms, I mean, of course, never met him, but I just was very interested in the music and very interested in the lifestyle and just this idea that everything you live it to the fullest. And I think that can be transformative in turning us into more creative, more life-seeking beings. But I think yeah, I don't see much of a downside from having a ton of free time. I think the idea of working is something, and this idea that we must survive is something that belongs to like almost our ancestors. We're going to become a different species, even though we might still be just the same, 6 foot tall mammals, but where we don't necessarily psychologically, even ever think, how do we survive? That's a bummer. I mean, to be honest, to be able to think survival all the time is like, what a waste of amazing creative energy that we could be working on. I mean, imagine if Mozart had to always think about his survival. I mean, and he did, and he had times he was getting bankrupt and these things. You have to play music for those things. But the point is, like, if you have the freedom to do things, that can be a way to create magnificence in your life without all the pressures. Like, wow, I'm hungry, and my daughter's hungry, or my wife is hungry. These are huge bummers, I think. So we're coming to a point when those things will be gone. And I think the life will be a lot better, more fun, more leisurely. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to slow us down. I agree with you. With modern medicine coming, I mean, we're going to get to the stars. The Star Trek era is going to begin. The more difficult it becomes to die because of modern medicine, I just think we're going to be taking all sorts of crazy risks.
I want to get back to a practical question regarding abundance. And this is central to the book by Ezra Klein again. And it's just such a huge talking point in modern politics. So there's this idea, and I think that it's very applicable here as maybe a possible critique, that almost anything can be screwed up with regulations. You mentioned the high-speed rail, and living in California, I used to live in San Francisco the past couple of years, and you just never see cranes in the sky building anything. And Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson in their book, they make this comparison that I think people should think very long and hard about how, like, it's just cheaper and quicker to build either affordable housing or market rate housing in Texas than it is in California. Texas right now is killing it with green energy, way more than California, even though we're the ones supposedly who believe in it. I'm worried that, all of these magical things start happening with automation and maybe with like reimagining what the government does for day-to-day lives, maybe what the DMV looks like, certain things like this. And Californians are right now in the mindset of just like regulating everything to a standstill. And I don't want, my Californian heart does not want the automated abundance economy utopia to be overtaken in Texas. And in California, we're still just sitting here with like robots that we can't get off the shelves for whatever reason. And I know that you've written a little about this. So tell me how you think California cannot screw this up, and how we mitigate the what regulations could do to this dream.
Sure. Well, let me just say to some of your listeners, in many ways, I am probably the most right-leaning of the left-leaning candidates that are running for government right now, because I come with a libertarian bias and a background, and that background is very much to deregulate things. It doesn't mean I'm in any way against any of the social injustice that Democrats stand for. I totally stand for all those. But I just, when it comes to business, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like the government in my pockets, and I don't like them with their stop signs out there saying stop, don't build, don't do these things. And I've seen. I mean, one of the reasons I am running for governor is I've had a real estate business for many decades now, and it had always been successful. But the last 5-8 years, it's become very, very challenging to do anything in California. It's just like, and so I've started kind of expanding internationally because it's just a pain in the butt to actually build anything here anymore and actually make money. And it's just become absurd, to be honest. So I as governor, I would be deregulating everything and stopping any new regulations as much as I could, just because it's become crazy. But I think one of the promises of having robots in your household and building buildings and doing tasks, because it's not just robots are going to be doing chores. We're going to have businesses where robots build houses. These robots are going to be programmed with the built-in regulations of the city or the state, whatever it is, into them. So they're never going to have to worry so much about, an inspector coming or doing this or doing that. Robots are just like the automated Waymo, the Waymos that drive. They always drive legally. That's just what they do. They were programmed to always drive legally, never to drive over the speed limit, and those kinds of things. So robots that are going to be in our houses are going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be always doing proper methodologies of whatever it is they're doing, whether they're doing some plumbing project or whether they're, taking the dog for a walk and is the dog, jaywalking or whatever it is, things like that. They're not going to be doing bad things. And I think that's going to make a lot more of a deregulated California, because one of the problems with regulation is that you try to regulate because people are doing, a few bad actors are doing wrong things. But if nobody is doing wrong things, then you don't need regulation laws so excessive. You don't worry about it as much. So I think we could come to a point when actually California reverses its regulatory kind of this huge body of laws it has, and maybe starts even eliminating some. And just because automation is doing such a better job of following the proper code.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, all that is very exciting to me. I'm actually glad that you mentioned Waymo, because I think that it's important to note to anyone who's broadly skeptical about this that the future literally is here. If you go to San Francisco or LA, I mean, like literally do it, like hop in a Waymo. It's an autonomous car completely fully. You immediately feel safe. And I've having ridden Waymos, I will just never get a human Uber driver ever again. Like I'm so sorry. They've all been lovely, but it is just better. I literally trust it more. And so the Waymo is a real world example of how this is just going to happen. I think to me, like I feel like I've seen it having been in those cars, and it's just so. I mean, it's exciting that it literally feels like it's here. It's just kind of like maybe you're right now, it's slow rolling, but I do think it's going to like hit in the near future. And I'm excited for it. I'm glad that you're out there talking about it and making other people excited about it rather than scared of it. I think this is all great. We didn't have the opportunity to talk more broadly about your campaign, so I want to have you on again in the near future to talk about some of your policies and kind of your vision for California. Maybe a little bit more about how California has not been on the right direction in the last decade or so, because I think it's important to hash that out. But what are you up to right now, and what's your how is the campaign going, just like kind of broadly?
Well, so we feel like we're to some extent being a little bit blackballed by the major media at the moment, and that's because we're running as a Democrat. We're proposing ideas that are almost completely, in some cases, opposed with other major Democrat candidates. However, on the grassroots level, we're getting more attention than I thought possible. We're, kind of in a lot of alternative media news all the time, a lot of videos going down. I've been attending a lot of big events and meeting people, handing out my cards. So in that sense, it's going great. I got to say, though, we are quite early. We're still approximately, 12 months away from the primaries. So gubernatorial elections haven't really heated up yet. They will here in about 3 or 4 months, I bet. But I'm optimistic about what's happening, and I'm optimistic about the ideas of putting a robot in every California household, as well as a basic income. It seems like no other candidate wants to even talk about the AI issue and talk about people losing jobs and talk about potentially needing a basic income. So I got that field covered, and I'm pretty stoked about that. So when people come to, look for that, I'm their guy. So that has been very good so far, and we've seen a tremendous amount of traction in social media.
Well, that is very exciting. I'm excited to see more from your campaign and to hear more about your thoughts on the automated abundance economy. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show and chatting. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Peter. It's been great.